Welcome, class. So today we are going to be talking about base 10 and exponents, and we are going to look at how that connects to decimals. Now, I know you guys have been learning about decimals and place values and how to add and subtract decimals, and so we're going to see how base 10 and exponents connects with place values. So you guys are going to need to get out a piece of paper so that way you can answer questions throughout the video. So first I am going to show you guys a few different things here. So I have this cube right here. In this cube, I'm sure you've seen this little cube before. This cube represents 1 unit. So I'm going to go ahead and write that on our board as just 1. And then next we have this long one right here, and this represents 10. So we have 10 units here. So I'm going to go ahead and write that out on our board as 10. Next we have this one right here, and this represents 100. So there are 100 units on this little thing right here. So 100. All right, this one's kind of fun. We have this giant cube, and this big cube represents 1,000. So there are 1,000 units here on this cube. Okay, so I want you guys to go ahead and answer this next question. If I have 1, 10, 100, 1,000, what do you think would come after 1,000 in our pattern here? Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and look at, there's a pattern here, and I want you guys to see if you can recognize the pattern. So what we're going to look at is, how do we get from 1 to 10? Well, one thing we could do is add 9, but something else we could do is multiply by 10. So to get 10, so to go from here to here, we're going to multiply by 10, and that's going to get us 10. Now, how are we going to get from 10 to 100? I mean, of course, one thing we could do is add 90, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and multiply this by 10. So how am I going to get from 100 to 1,000? Well, like we've been saying, one thing that we could do is add 900, but I'm going to multiply by 10 instead to get to 1,000. So what we did here was we did 10, we did 1 times 10 to get to 10, and then we did 10 times 10 to get to 100, and then we did 100 times 10 to get to 1,000. Now, there's a pattern here, and in the next question, I want you guys to tell me what the pattern is that you notice with these numbers. Okay, so the pattern that you should have noticed is that if I go from 1 to 10, it is 10 times bigger than the number before it. If I go from 10 to 100, 100 is 10 times bigger than 10. And if I go from 100 to 1,000, 1,000 is 10 times bigger than 100. So now a question that I have is, how could I get from 1 to 100? What would I have to do? Well, if I know that to get from 1 to 10, I multiply by 10, and then to get from 10 to 100, I have to multiply by 10. What would happen if I just did 10 times 10? That gives me 100. So if I want to go from 1 to 100, I just do 10 times 10. In the next question, I want you guys to tell me how you would get from 1 to 1,000. Okay, so some of you may have noticed a pattern again. So when I go from 1 to 10, we said you multiply by 10. So how many 10s do we have? Just one. And when I go from 1 to 100, I multiply 10 times 10. And how many 10s do I have here? I have 2. And when I go from 1 to 1,000, I have 3 10s. 1, 2, 3. So there is a shortcut to writing this. I don't have to always write out 10 times 10 times 10. I can use what is called an exponent. And now some of you may have heard of an exponent before, but an exponent is a shorthand way to tell how many times to use a number in a multiplication problem. So what is key here is that it is shorthand and it tells you how many times you use a number when doing multiplication, and multiplication only. It doesn't work for addition or subtraction. So an exponent would typically look like something like this. It's going to be, we're going to have a number in our box right here, and an exponent is going to be up here like this, like a little 1, or you might have a little 2 like this. So this is our exponent right here, this small number. So I'm going to repeat that again, the definition of our exponent. An exponent is a shorthand way to tell how many times to use a number in multiplication problems. So we have some multiplication problems here on our board, don't we? And since exponents are dealing with multiplication, I think we can change these to look like exponents. So earlier we said that to get to 100, we did 10 times 10. And we said that there were 2 10s that were being multiplied together. So I would say that this is 10 to the second power. So this is our exponent, and we are writing it in a shorthand way, and we are saying that we are doing 10 times 10 by putting it to the second power. Now here, I want you guys to tell me what you think the exponent's going to be for when writing 1,000. So go ahead and do that and write that on your paper. Now some of you may be wondering how our powers of 10 connects with decimals. Well, before we were looking at numbers that were to the left of the decimal point. So we have 1, and then 10, and then 100. So the ones, the tens, and then the hundreds. Well, now we're going to look at values to the left, to the right of the decimal place. So we have the tenths, and then the hundredths, and then the thousandths. So before we had said that this was the same as saying 10 to the first power, and we said that this was 10 to the second power. So we said 10 to the first, and we said 10 to the second power. And we had a pattern that was happening. So we said that 10 was 10 times bigger than 1, and we said that 100 was 10 times bigger than 10. Well, we also have a pattern happening to the right side of the decimal point. I want you guys to go ahead and predict what you think the pattern might be for the right side of the decimal place. So what we have here is we have the tenths place, we have the hundredths, and we have the thousandths place. Now, when we were on the left side of the decimal place, we were multiplying by 10 to increase each place value. So here, you may have noticed that 1/100th is 1,000th is 1/10 the size of 100th. And 1,000th is 1/10 the size of 100th. So this could also be written as 1/10 divided by 10. And then we could write, to get to this one, we could say 1/100th divided by 10. So from here to here, from here to here. So this looks very similar to what we were doing before, except we are dividing because our numbers are getting smaller and smaller. Whereas when we were working on the other side of the decimal point, our numbers were getting bigger and bigger. So, like before, we can write this the same way. I want you guys to tell me how we could write 1,000th with an exponent. So go ahead and do that for me. Okay, so we would say that this is divided by 10. And that to get from 1/10 to 1,000th, from here to here, we are going to divide 1/10 by 10, and then divide that by 10 again. And to get from here to here, we divided it by 10 one time. So this can be written as 10 to the first power. And this one can be written as 1 divided by 10 to the second power. So if I wanted to do 1 to this value, what do you guys think that I would do? Go ahead and write that down for me. So this is 1/10 divided by 10 3 times. So that means we have 1 divided by 10 to the third power. All right, well, that is all that I have for you guys. I hope that you were able to get an understanding of how base 10 works and how we are going to write our exponents. And I hope you guys will be able to use that when you are looking at place values and adding and subtracting decimals. Thanks for joining me.